I know there are a lot of new people here today where this is their first summit. Just show of hands is, wow, holy moly, this is great. Thank you. So, as I said, it makes me really happy to see you all here today. And since we have so many new people, I'll just tell you a little bit about the Three Tomatoes. I started this a few years ago because nobody was talking to the 50 plus woman. And certainly no one in the media and marketing people weren't, unless it was to sell us adult diapers and help me I'm falling products, which by the way, they're still marketing to us. And while it's a little better, even today, we are, when it comes to media and marketing people, we're pretty much invisible, which was really what was the impetus for starting the newsletter, which I sent to 60 friends. It was just a fun idea. And I was really amazed with the chord it struck with people. And I think that was because it was all about celebrating each other and supporting each other and showing how really fabulous we all are. I mean, look at you at every age and every stage of our lives. And since no one else was doing this, we should just celebrate each other. So I'm celebrating all of you today. So I really thank all of you for your support over the years because you have helped us grow from this little newsletter that started with 60 people to a media platform for grown-up women. And that platform includes our very robust website. We have every topic that smart, savvy women are interested in. We have fabulous contributors. Many of them are here today. Some of them are our panelists. Our newsletters are now nationwide, and we even have a few people outside of the country reading us. India is very popular. I'm not sure why, but it is. London and Canada, so that's great too. And we've expanded our city newsletters to 4 cities. We're now in New York City, Miami, LA, and San Francisco. And then 4 years ago, we spun off a publishing company to help women get their stories told and to get their books published. And it's been the most amazing thing that I've ever been involved with because we have now published over 50 books. We have several books in the works right now. Several of our authors are here today. Some of them you'll meet upstairs because they have recent books and you can talk to them, and the books are all amazing and terrific. And we just want to keep doing this because we have stories to tell. We've lived lives, and all of you have a book in you. So that's a very, very exciting thing. So our renewal summit, which Akers and I have now hosted, this is our 7th year. I can't believe it's 7 years already. And it's one of our signature events every year. And our whole goal is to keep everyone up to date, informed on everything we need to know to live healthy, happy lives. But the most important thing about the Three Tomatoes is fun. That's our motto. We have to have fun. Without fun, why are we here, right? So we have 2 other signature events coming up later this year that are both very fun. One is every fall we do a trip to the vineyards of the North Fork on a big luxury bus. My daughter, Ronnie Jenkins, started this. I think this year is going to be our 14th year. Last year we sold out in 24 hours. This is how much fun it is. And as they say, what happens in the vineyards stays in the vineyards. So if you get our notice about the wine trip, I'm just telling you, and you want to go, do not delay. Our other event that is amazing is called Tomatoes Got Talent. I started this 10 years ago with my friend Randy Levine Miller, and it's a talent show for women over 40. It has been another amazing experience, really showcasing amazingly talented women of every age, and a lot of women that started out in show business, segued to other careers, and this has given them a platform. And many of them are now back performing in cabarets all over the place, which is so great. So this year, on October 11th, will be our 10th year. It's kind of bittersweet because it's the last year that Randy and I will be producing the show. But this year's is going to be very special because we've invited back all of the winners from all the previous shows, and they are all going to quote unquote compete, but we'll crown the Super Tomatoes Got Talent star. But you will be in for such a treat. That will be at the Triad Theater, and you'll be getting a lot of notices from us. So now, before I turn this over to Anne Akers, who's going to tell you what is in store for you today, we have a very exciting announcement to make. So one of the many things that I admire about all of you tomatoes is that you are givers. You support many good causes, you're on boards, you lead boards, you volunteer, you donate your time and your money. The causes that I have always been passionate about are the ones that help to uplift women and girls everywhere. I mean, the Three Tomatoes really started because I wanted 50 plus women to be seen. For many years, I was president of the New York City chapter of UN Women, which is the United Nations entity for gender equality. And then after that, I formed the New York City Leadership Council for a wonderful organization called Plan International, which supports the rights of girls, helps them get educated around the world. Many of you actually here today, several of you were on our leadership council, and in 3 years, we raised $100,000. And that is the power of what women can do, and that's the power of women supporting other women. So recently, but we had shut that down about 3 years ago because we had more than reached our goal, and I was feeling something was missing, and I didn't want to be on another board at that point in time or lead something else. A lot of us know that feeling. You kind of have done it, you get burned out. But then our LA editor, Debbie Zip, introduced me to the She Angels Foundation, which is an incredible nonprofit organization that is dedicated to uplifting women's-led initiatives. And I was so impressed with their mission. And I told Anne about it, and she was impressed too. So today we are announcing that the Three Tomatoes and Glow Beauty Health and Wellness magazine, which is Anne's company, have partnered with the She Angels Foundation to form the Three Tomatoes and Glow Giving Circle. So the Giving Circle, thank you, the Giving Circle will award grants to grassroots female nonprofit organizations who provide mentorship, funding, and resources to a diverse portfolio of women and girls' causes. And I love this. I love the idea that it's grassroots local organizations we're going to be helping. And I'm happy to announce our first grantee that we'll be raising money for, and some of you will know who this is the Bella Abzug Leader Institute, called BALI, which was founded in 2005 by Liz Abzug, Bella's daughter. It's an amazing organization. They're doing incredible work with girls in Harlem and all really underserved communities, and they're mentoring them through middle school, high school, getting them into college, and turning them into future leaders. So our goal is by next year to raise $5,000, which I know we can easily do, and I know we can easily do this because we've already started out with a very lovely major gift from Anne Akers. But I'm really thrilled, and we're hoping to expand. If we raise more, we'll give another grant, and we're hoping that in each of the cities where we have our newsletters, we'll be able to do this on a local level there too. So we're officially launching this in July, but in the meantime, in all of your programs, there's a QR code now to go to our website. You can make a donation now. There's no big money commitment. You could make a donation in any amount, and you will become part of the Giving Circle. And there'll be a lot of interesting things that we'll be doing around that as well, and special events. So thank you for letting us share that excitement with you. So now I'm going to turn this over to Anne Akers, who's an incredible partner all these years putting this event together. And she's going to share the rest of the day.
All I can say is wow, wow, wow. And what a way to kick off our summit today. Cheryl, I don't know when you sleep. You must work in your sleep. And first of all, good morning, everyone. Welcome. Like Cheryl, I'm so happy to see you all. And for the early morning risers, brava. I know you probably hit that button on the snooze alarm to join us. So thank you for clearing the deck to be with us today. It's going to be a great day. I'm Ann Akers, the founder of Glow Beauty Health Beauty Health, Wealth, and Magazine, and also the health and wellness editor at Three Tomatoes. So one of the fun things that Cheryl and I do when we're planning programming is to think about the theme. And we were unanimous this year that our theme would be living the life you want. So my question to you is, what does living the life you want mean to you? And I would imagine in this room there is as many answers to that question as there are people. So I did a little research, and I came up with some comments from our poets, our philosophers, and our entertainers that I wanted to share with you. So from Bob Marley, love the life you live the life you love. From Reba McEntire, to succeed in life you need three things: a wishbone, a backbone, and a funny bone. From George Bernard Shaw, life isn't about finding yourself, life is about creating yourself. And from J.P. Morgan, the first step to getting somewhere is to decide that you are not going to stay where you are. And from me to you, and I also have a background in publishing, your life is a book, chapters still to be written, so let's make it a bestseller. So our panels today were all designed to support our theme, which is to motivate, inspire, and help you take that first step to the very best chapter of your life. Now, all of our program can be found on a QR code, but I'm going to summarize it just briefly. Our first panel, Finding Love. It's never too late, and love comes in many forms. How to get unstuck and into gear. So this is steps for identifying your passions and discovering new horizons. Tips for happy, healthy living. And as we know, health is wealth, and we have two panels with some outstanding experts on everything from the latest in alternative medicine, psychedelic medicine, exercise, nutrition, bone health, and much more. And for all of our business owners here, we have a panel of the country's really top VC experts and educators on funding for women-owned businesses. So this group of panelists really know the ropes. And at 4 p.m., after lunch and during lunch, that's our time to get acquainted and visit some of our exhibitors. But at 4 p.m., the highlight of the day will be a celebrity interview with Mercedes Ellington, who some of you know as the granddaughter of the Duke. And the Duke has recently celebrated his 125th anniversary at the Kennedy Center, so we're honored to have his granddaughter be with us today. And she really is the prime example of living the life you want. And we're not going to talk about age, but she's in the 8s. So that should be a fabulous interview. And then our last event of the day is a very special moment when we present the Woman of Purpose Award. And this year's awardee is Stacy Francis, who some of you know from Francis Financial and also from her not-for-profit Savvy Ladies. And then the best part of the day is the wine reception. So with the weather, with our good weather, we're going to meet outside, and this is also another time to stop and visit our exhibitors. So I just want to take a minute to not only thank our exhibitors, which really make this day possible, but also to bring to your attention the variety of really interesting people that we have here today from a variety of different expertise. Our sponsor, by the way, is Reviton Toothpaste. So you may be wondering, how does toothpaste become a sponsor? So our sponsor is really Rejuvenation Dentistry, Dr. Jerry Curatola, who some of you may know as a speaker from past events. And he has pioneered a product that is the world's first natural probiotic toothpaste. Now, this is a very important aspect of oral health. So you'll be hearing a little bit more about that today. And then our exhibitors, we have exhibitors from the world of fashion, beauty, health and wellness, self-care, and stress management. Gab Carlson, one of our dear friends who has a beautiful clothing line that's custom to all sizes and very vibrant colors and fabrics. Laura Cass, who is a jewelry designer who creates really one-of-a-kind pieces. They're what she calls fine demi pieces, and they're made with recycled metals, silk, and 14-karat gold threads. So there's something very special. The Three Tomatoes Book Publishing. So Cheryl has 6 of her authors here today, and they're available to visit with you, to sign books, and to just chat and get acquainted. Sonia Sotra is one of our speakers today. She is also an author, and she's a mind-body expert, and she's CEO of a company called Motosize, which is motivational exercise. And she's really an expert on getting unstuck and also packages some great adventure events that she'll be telling you about. Stress is gone. In these times, I think we all have a measure of our own stress and anxiety. And Brett Cotter has 25 years experience helping people deal with emotional pain and stress. He's worked with many veterans. He now does retreats at Omega, at Kripalu, and the Himalayan Institute, and he'll be there to tell you a little bit more about his work. Then we have in the cosmetic area a company called Everbody, and there was an original founder, Amy Schechter, who some of you may know, and now the company has morphed into a national franchise with locations around the city, and it's a cosmetic dermatology destination for both skin and body, so they do everything from Botox to skin treatments to anything that makes us look better and feel better. Immunology, Karen Ballou, our dear friend, who is an expert in skin health. So she is not here, but her team is represented, and she has some special gifts for everyone who can stop by her booth. Again, in the fashion area, Beverly Olavachi. You've seen some of, if you were here for the breakfast part, you've seen some of Beverly's fashions, and she's doing a very special sale today. So she actually has some beautiful dresses that are $100 or less. So I think one of our attendees was in the dressing room trying one on recently. So it's beautiful black quilt. Then in the cannabis area, and that is one of our afternoon panels, we have a company called 1906, and they're an industry leader in cannabis microdosing, and it's an edible. Then we have, lastly, Amy Kanarek, who does artisan jewelry and elegant handcrafted designs. So I hope you enjoy the shopping. I hope you enjoy getting acquainted with some of the people that have supported the events. And I think we're running on time, so I can now introduce our first panel of the day. The first panel of the day is Don't Give Up on Love. So it's never too late, never too old to find love in all its forms. So our moderator for the day is Ronnie Jenkins. So Ronnie is the managing partner of the Three Tomatoes. She's a social media guru and creates campaigns for authors, organizations, and small businesses. Our next speaker, Kaylin Rosenberg. Kaylin is not here. All right, Kaylin had a family situation to deal with. Nancy Rip White is the author of It Could Happen to You. So years ago, she discovered a life-changing truth, which was the importance of self-love, which leads to feeling empowered and becoming ready when love appears. She's motivated to help other women. She became a certified life coach specializing in relationships. Ann Loudon, who's also known as Kate Somerset, is the author of Mom, You Just Need to Get Laid. She's also, on the serious side, a philanthropist and board leader, a not-for-profit consultant, a nationally recognized speaker, marketing and branding expert, and spokesperson for adoption and cancer causes. She's a community foundation leader and the ultimate connector. Dr. Nan Bauer Magnet is co-editor of a book published by, was it Princeton or Rutgers University Press, Gray Love, which is stories about dating and new relationships after 60. She's a professor emeritus at City University of New York. She also worked with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, documenting the development of the Stella and Charles Gutman Community College at CUNY. I think that's our group.
Well, thank you, Anne. Thank you all for being here. This panel is like near and dear to my heart as someone who's 55 and single now after being with my husband for 24 years. And the don't give up on love, it's never too late is inspiring to me because I kind of gave up on it like a year ago. But anyway, obviously now at this stage in our lives, our priorities are very different, right? You have separate residences usually you have to worry about. It's certainly different than when you were in 20s and 30s. You know what you want, and you certainly know what you don't want. So I'm so looking forward to these three lovely ladies to share their insights and tips, and certainly reading passages from their books, and I encourage you all to buy them and read them. They're very, very funny. So we'll just jump right into it with Anne. Her book, Mom, You Just Have to Get Laid, explores stories of dating and new relationships after moving to New York City from Texas. So how did you decide after your long marriage, and what lessons have you learned from your 15 unique men that you met and dated in New York City?
Well, full disclaimer, first of all, when I moved to New York City after being married for 24 years, this must be the magic number, and getting a divorce, the full title of my book is Mom, You Just Need to Get Laid, The Adventures of Dating After Divorce. So I have to ask you, so I know who's in the audience, how many of you are single? A lot. Okay, then we've got the right audience then. Fantastic. How many of you are divorced? Okay, and how many are widowed? Well, so when I first came, first of all, when I was married for 24 years in Texas and in a sort of well-known, prominent marriage, I knew when I got divorced I couldn't stay in Texas because I would always be identified as the spouse of, and although I had my own street cred with my work, I just wanted to start over again. So I moved to the hardest city I could possibly think to move to with the Texas accent and Texas clothes and Texas makeup and all the things that made me who I was. I'd come to New York, and I wasn't going to date because I thought that part of my life was over until it wasn't. And about 3 months in, I started dating, and I didn't just go out with 15 men. 15 made the book, but I went out with 52 men. And so more to tell you about that later, but the reason I decided to date was not because I was looking for love. I wasn't looking for a relationship. I wanted to build community. I wanted to understand this culture here. I wanted to know what people were like here. And so it wasn't an experiment. It was really just an opportunity for me to build a fantastic group of new people in my life. And the 15 men in the book, a number of them know they're in the book, and they have signed books, and so we've remained friends, and it's been really a fun journey. Lessons I learned. The first lesson I learned is that it takes courage and self-esteem to date again. How many of you dated after either losing, okay, so a few of you. How many of you are thinking about it? Just a few more. Maybe we can convince you that it's probably a good plan. So I learned that you have to have courage because it's not an easy thing to do. And you also have to have self-esteem. You have to believe in yourself in order to be able to do it. And so that was my first, and through my experiences, I really came to tell people, believe in yourself first and then you'll have an opportunity. The second thing I learned was that there's not just one right person for us. A number of us have been married. We might have been married to someone that we really cared about, and then that ended, and there's somebody else out there. So those are the beginnings of my lessons.
That's great, and I think it just goes to show with your 52 number also that you have to cast a wide net in order to find 15 of them were story-worthy.
Can I add to this?
Yeah.
My book's on gray love. And
Nan, put your microphone up to your mouth.
It's on gray love, and it's about dating from 50, 60, 70, 80, and 90. And there are people writing, and everyone's writing their own story. It's not interviews. But to add to what you're saying, one of the things, the first half of the book is about the dating process, people trying to find a relationship, mostly online, but not all online. And the second part of the book is about people who have found a relationship and what are some of the issues and arrangements that they've made. But in terms of looking for dates and dating, one of the themes of the first part of the book is that you have to have a sense of adventure. It's hard dating online. You have burnout. But one of a lot of the women writing, and I don't think I could do this. I mean, I went online and I did date, but someone dated for 150 dates of different men over a long period. And what she said is that she saw it as an adventure. And if you can get that attitude, she saw it as learning about herself. She saw it as also, she has great stories to tell, so you can entertain your friends, you know. So if you can be positive about it, because it is a hard job. So that's one of the themes, and it relates to what you were saying.
That's great. I'm going to move over to Nancy. And Nancy, as a certified life coach focusing on self-worth and self-love, how do you help individuals overcome the belief that they're too old or it's too late to find love? And what are some of the common barriers you encounter, and how do you address them?
I'm going to start with a story about my mom, Harriet Ripp. My mom lived until she was 91, and when she was about 85, she called me up one day, and she said, "A funny thing happened to me this morning. I looked in the mirror, and I said, 'Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?' And the mirror said, 'Not you, kid.'" And we laughed about it. But after the laughter, I started thinking about how we look at ourselves in the mirror. What do we see? What do we say to ourselves? Are we critical, or are we giving it a thumbs up? Do we say you're amazing, or do you look at all the flaws that we could see? So that is what I'm posing to you. How many of you look in the mirror and give thumbs up? Yay, wow. I didn't expect that. And how many, and you don't have to admit it, you don't have to raise your hand, but many, many women look in the mirror and don't see the beauty that might be inside. They're looking at the outside. So I took this very seriously, and I decided to create a course called Shine Baby Shine. And Shine Baby Shine is really about looking at the treasure trove that we are, that we have from our life experiences, from our triumphs, our struggles, and that's who we are. And what do we focus on? So many of us focus on our weaknesses and not our strengths. So what I decided to do is, in this 30-day course, have every woman sign a contract, a self-love agreement. And what they committed to for 30 days, no criticism of themselves, no judgment, no put-downs, but rather focusing on our strengths and not our weaknesses. Also, I had them send to themselves or to another person their wins every day. Really be on the lookout for what's winning today, and to how it relates to dating is that we are armed when we come to a relationship. Like Nan said, if you look at it as an adventure, coming with the best of you that you are, and really, really taking a look at what you have to offer, the dating process becomes easier and easier because you're coming with strength. You're joy of who you are and all that you have accomplished.
That's great.
And one more thing, I have contracts for anybody who wants to take this on. I have contracts back when we go for lunch. Anybody who wants to take this on, you're welcome to a contract, a commitment for 30 days. Do it by yourself or take a friend or me and have fun with it.
And that's wonderful. I know among my single friends, the common theme is obviously you have to know yourself and love yourself first before you can give love to others. So that's great. But Nan, in your book, you have these 45 people between the age, men and women between the ages of 60, 94. Some were heterosexual, some were gay, lesbian couples. Let's talk about the attitudes toward love and intimacy and how they've evolved over time, and maybe how they evolve even from your 50s to your 60s and on.
I do want to say one thing about looking in the mirror. When I was about 75, I started dating. And many people, many of my friends said, get rid of the gray. I looked in the mirror, I had gray hair, I looked old. And I didn't want to, because I felt like that's me, and I wouldn't feel comfortable. But there's an article in the book about a woman who did an experiment. She dated on Match with brown hair, and then she dated on Match with gray hair. And she says, and I don't know if I believe this, she said she got more dates with the gray hair. So.
You're going to put L'Oreal out of business then.
In terms of dating when you're older, I don't know if this is exactly what you asked me, but one of the things that was interesting in my book is that one of the women gave the book to her daughter, who was in her 30s and who was dating, and she said it was really helpful, even though it was about people who were 60, 70, 80, 90. She said that the issues were pretty similar that she found. But there are also very unique issues to people who are older, and I'll just run through them pretty quickly. One is that you come with a huge background, with many relationships, with children, and that how you integrate that or deal with that, how the person that you're dating deals with it. I have a piece in the book called The Ghosts in the Bed. And when I was dating, and I still am, this one man, I realized that it was not only him and me in the bed, but it was his wife who had died, and it was my husband who had died. And the question is, do you bring them into the relationship, or do you leave them out? And I would advise that you bring them in, because they're part of you. And I'll skip over, there are a lot of issues when you're older, but one of the difficult ones, really difficult, is the whole thing of your body and age and illness and sexuality. It does, in the book, people do talk about sexuality, and one of the things that several people say is that it's great when you're older. And I think it's because when you have an older relationship, you're not thinking about, well, are we going to have kids? What are we going to do with the kids? The kids are not there bothering you. Your career, perhaps, you've finished that. So you have a lot of time. And if you have a lot of time, you can have good sex. So think about that as a real positive thing about being older. But the difficult thing about dating when you're older is that unfortunately, the ending of the relationship. You know that you have to face illness, disability, and death. And there's very touching pieces in the book about that. And unfortunately, women will face that more than men, because men die sooner than women. And a lot of women in the book write about that they don't want to be the nurse. They've been through that already. So you have to think about that very, very seriously when you date as an older person. So I think
Nan,
that's
I
it.
was going to say one thing about the nurse aspect. When I started dating, and I was dating both online and meeting people in person, I was assessing whether age mattered, whether my age mattered, whether their ages mattered. And so there was one particular person who's in the book whose name is Saul the Sailor. All my men got different names based on their their activities. And so Saul the sailor was 15 years older than I was, and after meeting me in a week, he invited me to sail with him on his sailboat in Europe. And so I was assessing whether I should go or not go because I'd only known this man a week, and I told him I was dating other people, and he said, just come and learn how to sail. So I'm telling several people that I'm going with this man who's 15 years older or so than I, and my financial advisor said, just keep in mind, you don't want to be the nurse with the purse. And that term I had never heard before. Maybe it's very familiar to you, but and this man wanted to get married. Like, he knew me for a week and said, you check all the boxes, come sail with me and we'll make it permanent. And that was not in my plan. I did go sailing, but the bottom line is you do have to think about what you bring to the relationship, your health, their health, and it's a consideration which changes the picture of that sort of carefree adventure aspect, which I do think is important.
I have a little different twist. One of the stories in my book called It Can Happen to You is 50 stories about women who woke up in the morning and there was nobody out there. No man in sight, no woman in sight. And by the end of the day, something amazing happened. And they met someone that became very significant in their lives. And there was one woman who was 75 years old. And the rabbi, her rabbi, said to her, oh, you're here. Hi. Can I say it? Okay. She was fabulous and 75 years old. And the rabbi said to her, how would you like to meet a fabulous man? He's 98. And she said, you mean he wants to date? And the rabbi said, no, he wants to get married. Am I telling you right? Yeah. So she did not concern herself with the future. She was in the moment, going to have a fabulous time, and she did. It didn't last as long as she would have loved it to, but she had an incredible.
He died.
Yeah, he didn't make 100, but she had, and when she told me the story, it was just so inspiring and so encouraging to just live in the moment, go out on those dates, enjoy yourself, like how you show up, and we never know. So thank you, Judy.
Judy has amazing stories, by the way. Judy, raise your hand in case anybody wants to talk to you after. Because we did a podcast a few years ago on dating after a certain age, and Judy was my guest on the podcast, and I just love her stories, and they're inspiring. But I want to ask the question, and it's always a sensitive subject. If you do have health conditions, at what point do you bring it up when you're dating and you meet someone? Because that could be a turnoff to someone. Your nurse with a purse example. Like, if someone, I know I met somebody recently that had had a stroke 5 years ago. You wouldn't know it if he didn't tell me that. But that was in the back of my head. I don't want to be, what's this guy going to do if I, So what do you guys recommend?
Well, I think it determines really your dating agenda. I always say, decide why you're dating. Are you dating because you want to have fun? Are you dating because you want to have sex? Are you dating because you want to be in a relationship? Are you dating because you want to get married? There is a whole range, a continuum of why you might want to date. And if you are thinking about full-time relationship and the health concerns are an issue, then they need to be addressed. If it's not part of what your dating agenda is, then enjoy that person for the time that you want to spend with them.
What about you, Nan?
I
I mean,
think
in
there's
your
no-
book, 94,
Yes.
some of your subjects.
But I don't think there are any rules. And just like you shouldn't obsess the first time you date, you shouldn't talk about your ex-husband all the time. Or, you have to figure out when to tell somebody something. So you have to just figure it out. There what is in the book, Bonnie Fails, her story, which is a nice one too. She was in her 80s. She met online a man in his 90s, and he did right away say he has a walker and he has some serious illnesses. And he was a poet, and she fell in love with his poetry. And she moved against advice from a lot of people. She moved from Texas to Ohio to be with him. And she spent 2 good years with him. And so you never know. And as you said, are you dating for 20 years from now, or you're just dating for each day? And you have to be brave. You really do.
Well, we're going to jump into dating for marriage, and we're going to show a little clip, but I'm just going to set it up. Who here has watched any of the Bachelor or Bachelorette series? Okay, there's a lot of people. I could proudly say I've actually never seen one, but I certainly know what it is. And I'm sure everyone here has heard, whether you watched it or not, about the most recent Golden Bachelor, the 72-year-old man who went on in pursuit of love after being widowed. So, Justin, can you play this clip?
When I woke up this morning, it was difficult. I had really mixed feelings. And I got to the point with the questions I had asked myself about how did I get here, and is she the right girl? And I came to the realization that you're not the right person for me to live with. You're the person that I can't live without.
All right, I think I just choked a little bit in my mouth over that. So that was 72-year-old Jerry Turner, and he proposed to 7-year-old Teresa Nist. Then they divorced 3 months later. And just a little fact, there have been 40 combined seasons of The Bachelor and Bachelorette, and only 8 couples have stayed together on that. Not such great odds. So these women are going on there with the intent to marry, obviously, and find love. What could have gone wrong there with that?
Everything. It's totally prepackaged, produced show. And for anybody to think that there can be a really legitimate relationship with the least amount of time given to getting to know people, and the pressure of however other many competitors you have to earn this one person's affection, is pretty preposterous. I think the thing that bothers me most about the show is how it's promoted by ABC. There's so much ageism. They say there's not. They say this is opportunity for older people whom they sort of make fun of in their marketing. Like, oh, grandma, so cute. You should get out and try this. And I'm offended by the way that they're using this as a pitch to get an audience, and not surprised that this happened. I know.
And she's 70.
Exactly.
She's 70.
Yeah, right.
Okay. See, I told you I didn't watch the show, but
Yeah.
I did want to talk about the notion of love, and it was very offensive. He kept saying, "I love you," and then the next woman he dates, the next day, "I love you." And the word love, I don't think the show really understands the complexity of love, and especially older love. It was more like teenage love, and all the women were vying each other, and they kept saying, "I love him." So the whole notion of love, and one of the things in the book you see is that a lot of older people want a relationship, want a companion, but they don't necessarily want to live together, because you have your separate residences, you have your lives. And I think that was one of the things, of the many things that messed up the Golden Bachelor. They lived many states apart. How do you make a relationship in that way? Do you move? And most of the people, it's called living apart together. A lot of older people, that's what they do. And that's what I do with the person I'm dating. And
Why do you think the show was so popular then?
it's fast.
By women?
It's a love story. It's a romance. It's a soap opera. I loved it and hated it. I hated it at the same time. It's very compelling, although it's dishonest.
Well, it also showed women that were vibrant and
agree in that I think the women that I speak with, it's taken them to a new level. The women who might have thrown in the towel, the women who might be sitting on the bench waiting. I think even though it didn't work out, even though we can, talk about it coming from a negative kind of perspective, I agree with so many of the things. However, it gave women hope. It gave women inspiration that maybe they could find someone too. The camaraderie of the women was really wonderful to watch. And I think a lot of women took themselves from giving up to maybe dressing a little more flirty, maybe more open to possibilities. And my take on all of this, I believe, anybody who knows me knows my mantra is slowly is holy. And as we age, the time frame gets a little less, but I think it's really, really important to spend 4 seasons with someone. And I don't mean summer, spring, fall, winter, however you say it, but really, how is the person that you're with in an argument? How are they with the waiter, the service people? How are they with their children? How do they problem solve? Those are things that, unless we really see 4 seasons with someone and they see us, we don't know. We just don't know what the future will hold. So, yeah, I think the biggest mistake they made was getting married in 3 months. That's sort of a red flag for all
Yeah, I
of
think
us.
it also it sets up unrealistic expectations. I mean, when you're dating and you're in this beautiful location and you're going on helicopter rides and you're taking candlelight picnics on a beach, and I mean, then it's not really real life, right? But there is something interesting is that women, I know among my friend group, always complain, oh, this guy's out dating everybody on the planet, yet we're glorifying the show that they're competing, and I think there were 25 or something women on this show. Now, Anne, I know you mentioned that when you went with Sailor Saul, you told him you had been dating other people. And what do you recommend? I mean, a lot of people aren't forthcoming with that, and I think that was very honest with you, so you set up your expectation. You want to talk about that a little?
Well, I think I've been compared to, until I've ended up in a relationship with one of these 15 men, to a serial dater. And the way that's described is that men tend to date multiple people sort of at the same time. Women tend to be more likely to form a relationship or look for a relationship. I just think that's how we're wired emotionally. That's how we build connection. And since I wasn't looking for a relationship, even though I've gratefully ended up in one, it's been lovely, I was very candid with people that I was dating. I let them know I was dating other people. And Saul the sailor, in just fury, even when I got to this sailing trip, said to me, what is it, you want to just sample other men? Am I not good enough for you? And I said, I'll go home if you don't want me here. If you really feel that our agreement, which was that I was going to date other people, you're gone all summer, and I'm so new to New York City, I'm so new to this life, I need to give this a chance for me and for you. It wouldn't be fair to you. And he reacted badly, but he was one of the few. Everybody else seemed to appreciate that I was honest about it, because I didn't want to be deceptive, and I didn't want to try to get my calendar so boxed in that I was trying to juggle people. I wanted to understand how I could make this, I wanted to be authentic.
Yeah, and I still hear the term player being thrown around at guys, and I'm on a singles dating site group on Facebook, and it's a mix of ages. These 30-year-old women, if somebody puts up a picture of a 65-year-old man, they said, oh my God, he's still doing that? He's still a player? I mean, what do you guys think, Nan and Nancy? Do you still see that? Are guys in their 60s, 70s still doing this, dating multiple women? And
Well, one of the men in the book, Gray Love, says dating online is like a candy store for men. And he said he couldn't stop because there was so many women he was getting messages from, and he kept thinking around the corner is another one even better. So I think one of the problems is the statistics. how many men out there versus how many women. And as you get older and older, it gets worse for older women.
So let's talk about online dating. There's a lot of do's and don'ts if you have your profile out, and women complain about fish pictures or pictures at the gym or selfies. Do you have any recommendations on technology and how these people that you were interviewing were embracing it and what to do with your profile?
I didn't interview. These are people writing because you want to hear their real voice and the details of their lives. There are lots of ways to do it. Someone named Vincent Valenti, he put up 28 things that he wants from a woman and about 18 things that he wanted everyone to know. And so when you date online, one of the things is you should be specific and clear, and also write your profile so that you stand out. I look back at my profile, and it looked like everyone else's profile. I like to eat Chinese food and walk in the woods, and it was very boring, my profile.
Travel. I like travel and yoga.
Yes. And I live in New York City, and I love, all the restaurants. I don't know, it was boring. Luckily, I found somebody. But so you could be like Vincent, very, very specific. But then there's another story in the book, Jack Jacobson, and you could also be very flexible. So you have to play between those two places. Jan had been married for a very long time. She divorced her husband because she felt like he wasn't communicating enough and he wasn't open enough. And she started after a while dating on Match, I think, men. And she realized that, why is she dating men? They're just like her husband. They're not as, in touch with their emotions. So she thought about it for a long time. She said, I think I'm going to try women. And she had never thought about that before. She starts dating women, and she meets somebody she likes, and she gets very frightened. And she leaves. She pulls away. And she thought about it for a long time, and she thought, I like this woman. I should be open. I should try it. They've been together for 5 years now. They're very happy. But so what I'm trying to say is you can either be very rigid, and I don't want to use that word because that's negative, very clear about what you want and know what you want, or you could be like Jan, actually be open to what is going to happen. So those are two different ways of dating online.
You talked about the players. I just had one of the men in the book text me 2 days ago trying to get me to meet for a rendezvous, and he knows I'm in a relationship. So there are those out there. I have to share this with you. So crazy things happen online in terms of the communication that you get, and this is a poem that one of my online suitors, whom I never met, sent me. Happy holiday and new year. It's time for good times. It's time for cheers. It's time to make resolutions. It's time to come up with solutions. No more stupid, ugly guys who have big stomachs and fat thighs. No more cheap, nasty men whose home resembles a pig pen. No more men who never work out, who like to scream and like to shout. If meeting the right man is your resolution, then I have for you the perfect solution. I am handsome with an MBA, and I work out almost every day. I like to laugh and have fun. I love the beach and the sun. I shave daily to remove the stubble. I love to kiss and to cuddle. I do not play any games. Irvin Roth is my name. He may still be out there. I take great pride in what I say and do, and I will always be true and honest with you. So here's what I propose. Won't you please accept my rose? I'm trying hard to make you see that you would be so happy with me. And then he goes, there's more, and I won't. So thank you so much for your consideration and time. I never laid eyes on a woman as beautiful as you. I hope this is the start of something wonderful and new. So that was
Gotta give him points for creativity, right?
I gave him points for
I
that.
mean, it didn't work in the end, but
But how
it's-
many women does he send that to?
That I don't know.
yes, I mean, there's a common joke I know among my friend group of how many good morning beautifuls do you get all the time, and it's like they just go through their list of good morning beautifuls. But Nancy, I want to talk about your book a little bit because you profiled these 50 amazing couples, of which Anne is actually one of them because she's now coupled.
Anybody else?
Yeah, to talk about some of those connections in the book, and certainly, I know Anne's relationship now is no exception, but you did profile her, and it's an amazing story, so.
Yeah, well, like I said before, the common theme was waking up in the morning, some hopeless, some just threw in the towel. Oh, sorry. And is this okay? And some just never thought that they would meet again. And so since I'm a teenager, I've been fascinated with how people meet. So if I'm in a restaurant waiting for a friend to arrive and there's a couple next to me, that's the question I'll ask. And everyone loves to tell how they met. And it's a great icebreaker wherever you are. And so that's when I decided to write this book and give hope to any woman who has an inkling of meeting someone again. And my stories range from a 14-year-old girl who was a mother's helper in Fire Island 35 years ago and had a crush on the older brother who was away at college. And he came back the next year, and her crush was even stronger. But now he was 20, and she was still only 15. We cut to 20 years later. She got divorced. She found out he was married. She got divorced and took an adult education class on psychology. And who is the professor? And they lived happily ever after. And my stories run from like Judy at 75, so the youngest was 14, and every age in between. And the stories, one of my favorites is a woman had a brain tumor. Could this have a happy ending other than her health? Yes. She was given recommendations from three doctors. 2 did not take her insurance, but the 3rd did. She went to him and was taken by him with the hopes that she would be okay health-wise. And after it was all over, it was a success. She went for a follow-up and had an interview that day, and she was, instead of wearing the gowns that they give in the hospital, she was all dressed up. She was feeling great, so happy. And because she was no longer a patient, he was able to ask her out, and they've been together 9 years. So anything is possible. There was a woman, it was pouring rain, a woman dropped her umbrella, and it turned inside out. A man picked it up, and he said, "Do you want to go under an awning?" And that led to coffee, that led to dating, and they're married. So it is every story that you can possibly think of, and the bottom line is, it can happen to you. That's the title of the book. It can happen to everyone who wants it. So
Those are wonderful stories, and we want to keep those great stories as we close this out. But we're going to close it out with a lightning round here. So I'm just going to ask a few questions, and I want you guys to just go down and answer it. You don't even have to give an explanation, but just quick tips and advice. Green flags in a relationship. And
Good communication. Oh, good communication.
Nancy?
good listener.
For me, can't write a sentence.
Punctuation is
So
like,
you're saying green flags.
Green flags.
Yeah.
Green
Oh!
flags.
yeah, green flags.
Can write a sentence.
Can't write a sentence. Exclamation point, right? Online dating after 50, yay or nay?
Yes.
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 Oh, I love it. I love it. Best first question on a date.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
What was the funniest thing that ever happened to you on a first date?
I can't give one. I think you just need to talk a lot for many months before you know anything.
That's great. So as we go out, Anne, under her name, Kate Somerset, writes often for the Three Tomatoes, a dating advice column, and she talks about this, how do you psych yourself up for a date? And it's called your walk-up song. Kind of like if anybody watches baseball, Major League Baseball, the guy who comes out to the plate in the batter's box, what song, we think about Mariano Rivera. They have the Sandman from Metallica because he was the closer to end it out. So I want you guys to leave this session with thinking about what your walk-up song is that psychs you up, that makes you feel empowered, that makes you feel good about yourself before you go out on that date. And unfortunately, we couldn't play the clips, but I wanted to thank my panelists for being amazing. And Anne's walk-up song was Can't Take My Eyes Off You by Frankie Valli, which I love. It's a good one. Nancy picked Flowers from Miley Cyrus, who's like my favorite, and that was my anthem all last summer. I could buy myself flowers, hold my own hand. And then for Nan, we have Helen Reddy's I Am Woman, and it's just great. So I want to thank you guys for joining us. Everybody go home, think about your walk-up song and what that is, and feel empowered, and go out an online date, and don't tie your hair. Thank you very much.
So thank you all for your humor, your wisdom, your insight, and it can happen to you, but just make sure it's in separate homes and not on national TV. And we now have our second panel, and our sponsor is Reviton, and I'd like to introduce Dr. Greco. She'd come to the stage. There you are. So we're happy to introduce Dr. Jeannie Greco. She is a biologic and restorative dentist for adults and children. She works at New York City's Rejuvenation Dentistry, which was founded by Dr. Jerry Curatola. After she completed her dental residency at Northwell Health as chief resident, she joined Dr. Curatola's practice, where she was trained and has become known for her exemplary patient care and a holistic approach to maintaining and improving lifelong oral health. Today, she's going to speak to us about Reviton, which is the world's first all-natural prebiotic toothpaste.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Anne, for that wonderful introduction. And I'm so sorry. Thank you, Anne and Cheryl and everyone at Three Tomatoes for hosting such an incredible event. I'm Dr. Jeannie Greco. I'm a biologic dentist here representing Reviton today. It's the world's first prebiotic toothpaste, which was developed by Dr. Jerry Curatola over 15 years ago. And he had this vision for a toothpaste that really was free of any chemicals, toxins, or detergents. Something that was truly safe enough for his own children to swallow when brushing with it. It was scientifically researched with 4 double-blind randomized controlled trials, proving that it doesn't disrupt the oral microbiome. It truly maintains homeostasis. And what we now know about the Human Microbiome Project is that we want to maintain that. We don't want to lose the good microbes. So with that being said, it is truly a game changer. It's become a cult classic in the wellness space. So we are here today up at our booth upstairs, and we are welcoming you guys to ask us any questions. And if you have any questions about biologic dentistry, I'd be happy to answer any of them for you guys. All right, enjoy.
Right, our next panel is on alternative medical treatments, and it's going to be moderated by Beatty Cohen. Here she comes. Is a nationally recognized psychotherapist. She is a sex therapist. She is the author of For Better or Worse Forever, Discover the Path to Lasting Love. She is an advice columnist for Dan's paper in the Hamptons and Palm Beach. She is a national speaker, a radio and television expert, and host of the weekly Ask Beatty show, which can be heard on the Progressive Radio Network. And she has a private practice in New York City and in East Hampton. And our panel, starting with Roberta Mittman. So Roberta is a board-certified licensed acupuncturist and holistic life, health, and relationship coach. She has pioneered her virtual one-on-one proprietary technique called rescripting, which blends Chinese medicine and principles from psychology and holistic medicine. She helps her clients successfully and quickly identify and release personal struggles. Dr. John Kennedy. Dr. John Kennedy is chief of the Division of Foot and Ankle Surgery at NYU Langone, and he is a professor of orthopedic surgery and a pioneer in the realm of orthobiologics and regenerative medicine. He is a graduate from the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland and has worked as an attending orthopedic surgeon in the U.S. for over 20 years. And lastly, Ronit Kishon, PhD. Dr. Kishon provides psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. She's an expert in treating trauma, depression, PTSD, and bipolar disorder. She has treated Holocaust survivors, Vietnam War veterans, combat veterans, and 911 survivors and families. She is an associate professor of clinical medical psychology and psychiatry at New York State Psychiatric Institute at Columbia University.
Well, I'm absolutely thrilled, everybody, to be here with you. And for me, this is really a nice change from talking about love and sex. We're going to be talking about alternative medicine. And our first speaker is going to be Dr. Kennedy, who has been in the forefront of biologic augmentation for over 35 years. And I think that our group really needs to understand exactly what is, in fact, regenerative medicine, and then we're going to talk about who the best candidates are and some of the multi-treatments that are available that are literally changing people's lives.
First of all, many thanks indeed for having me here. It's a great honor and privilege to be, I would say it's somewhat differently, it's the Three Tomatoes, but you say Three Tomatoes. So, but thank you for having me here. And so, yeah, I've been an orthopedic surgeon for many years. And one of the things my old boss said to me was, if I'm teaching you something today and you're doing the same thing in 20 years, you're probably doing something wrong. You need to be constantly evolving. And at the same time, I was doing arthroplasty. I was up in Boston and I was putting in hips and knees using plastic and metal. A very wise man said to me, he said, you know, in a while we'd be looking at this and we'd be saying it's like putting in Washington's wooden teeth. We'd be looking back on this and saying, we can do better. And so that stimulated me into thinking, how can we do better? And nothing better than the holistic approach in terms of regenerating ourselves. And we have the ability to do that. We all have stem cells. Regardless of what age we are, those stem cells continue to multiply and replicate and repair. And we can harness those to replicate our cells, to regenerate and repair things that are going bad as we get older, and things like arthritis of the knees and hands and feet and so forth. In sports medicine, we constantly see patients who are told they need surgery, and yet they may not, and they may need a whole plethora of things, but surgery is probably the last thing they need to get them back. So that's just a very brief introduction in terms of how we can harness ourselves through blood, through bone marrow, even through fat cells, and that's what I do. I still operate because that's important as well, but it should be at the very last option. So I think in Europe we call ourselves orthopedists. In America, oftentimes we call ourselves orthopedic surgeons, and I think we should probably remove that last name to be the very last option.
You know, I have a question, and I think a lot of people are really wondering about is, should this be really... Should... Can you all hear me now? Oh, okay, good. Right. So should this be a first-line treatment after an in-depth evaluation and diagnosis is established?
It's a great question, and I think that's a much better microphone. I can hear myself echo. Yeah. So the answer to that, very simply, I think is yes, but it's probably more complex than that. I think it should be a discussion. It's not always the right answer. There are some things that we simply can't treat with regenerative medicine. End-stage arthritic destruction of a joint that's mechanically imbalanced. Injecting that with PRP is not fair to the patient to say that's going to get them back playing tennis. But I think it needs to be. We need to be much better at recognizing early problems in the musculoskeletal system and addressing them not with surgery, but with a change in lifestyle, holistic approach to the body and mind. It's all part of the same thing. What I do is one small part of that. And then harnessing the patient themselves. We all hear about regenerative medicine using amniotic fluid and using all these other recombinant proteins. You don't need that. You need yourself. All the things we need, we have in us. We just need to harness them properly.
You know, it's so interesting, like in my world of psychotherapy and sex therapy, I mean, we're so busy oftentimes just putting bandages on psychic wounds. And, you know, I wrote Getting to the Root of the Problem, which is exactly what you're talking about, which is exactly what we all need to be talking about, whether we're talking about mental health issues or whether or not we're talking about physical problems. And that's what you're saying, and it's just, it's so wonderful, you know, to hear a physician saying, yes, we can heal ourselves. And there's been medicine around for many, many more years other than the last 300 years, and we need to find a way to incorporate you know, methodologies and procedures that are really in the best interest of people, which is why everybody, it is so important, and people who hear me, you know, say this on the radio all the time, how careful we need to be who we let into our lives, whether we're talking about love or whether we're talking about medicine.
And I would echo that. Be very careful, because one of the things I'm very grateful to James, my fellow, who's also from Dublin. James did a little background research for this talk today, and we looked at regenerative medicine in New York, and there's 400 regenerative medicine stores, if you like, in New York.
Stores.
And less than 5% of those have any scientific oversight. Less than 5%. That's an enormous indictment.
Yeah.
And then when you really start mining into what is being advertised, this is false advertising. People are talking, we'll talk about later about PRP. PRP is just a blood product. We take out those growth factors and a very powerful anti-inflammatory. We use that in arthritic changes and musculoskeletal injuries. But it's been advertised as stem cells. There isn't a single stem cell in PRP. And when you see that, then you have to have your hackles raised a little bit about, you know, what's going on. It's going to be a $30 billion industry at the end of this decade. So when you see massive amounts of money being generated, then you know there's bad actors in that space. So it's always that thing, buyer beware, be careful. When you go to see somebody and they promise you that they're going to regenerate your knee or your wrist or whatever it is, they won't. There's no regenerative medicine that we have right now that will give you something brand new like you were when you were 17. What we can do is we can prolong the life of those joints. We can prolong the life of tendons and muscles and so forth. We can't restore it to the way it was. And when you see those claims, which, you know, it looks like it's too good to be true, it probably isn't true. So always research, as you quite rightly say, beware who you let into your life. Two people we trust mostly in life, apart from our spouses and partners, but we also trust pilots, we trust doctors, implicitly. We walk in there and we trust them. And I say we probably would want to do a little bit of a background check if we know the person flying the airplane isn't qualified. And it's the same thing with doctors. Lots of people call themselves regenerative specialists, but be careful.
Exactly. As I say in my field as well, a lot of people call themselves therapists and healers and coaches. And again, we really, really have to be so careful who we do let in our lives and to be living our lives in ways that are really in our best interest. So that who are, for example, the best candidates for these kinds of medical interventions?
I hate to be hogging the floor here, but I'll carry on and then just interject whenever. But I think, so for me as an orthopedic surgeon, I deal with musculoskeletal problems, joints, knees, and wrists, hands, and all the rest of it. So you can use regenerative medicine, all sorts of things. We've all heard of the Kardashians using these vampire facelifts. And that's where you use PRP, and it's a blood product, their own blood. They put it on their face, and it attracts collagen to the surface. So it actually works. It sounds silly, and you wouldn't necessarily go to those people for your medical advice, but it does work. And so in my sphere, the area that I'm looking at particularly is patients who have early arthritic change. Let's say you're out playing tennis and let's say your knee or your wrist, whatever it is, your ankle hurts. Don't think that it'll go away. We all do that. We're all procrastinators. We all think, oh, it'll be fine tomorrow when I wake up. It probably won't be. So get that checked out. And if you do have early arthritic change, the earlier you diagnose that, the better the treatment. So if we have categorized things from 1 to 4, 4 being sort of destruction completely of all the cartilage in your joint, much better that we get in at an early stage because we can protect that cartilage and allow it last a lot longer. So if you're out playing tennis or golf, whatever it is, even walking, and it's painful, get it checked out. Don't wait. It won't go away. Get it checked out early on. So those patients do very well. And everything I do has to be evidence-based medicine. We heard earlier on about rigorous randomized controlled trials. So we have to have level 1 level of evidence and quality of evidence before we'll do anything. And in NYU, we looked at this problem about 5 years ago and we said, we can't, if we don't police ourselves, then the state or federal government will police us because there's so many bad actors. So we don't let anything into NYU unless it's got good basic science and good clinical evidence. So if you come in with a knee problem, you know you're going to get a product that is shown. It won't work in everybody, but it will work in 70 to 80% of patients.
So if people have questions or issues, they'll be able to contact your office directly, is that right?
Yes, absolutely. James will be handing out cards later on. No, you won't.
You can do that, James. That
No,
would
but just go
that
online
would
and
be
you'd like
that
everything
would be
you'll
great.
find. Yeah.
So if we're going to be moving forward a little bit and talking about the world of psychedelics, and by the way, this is an international panel. You may not know this. I'm Canadian. I'm Canadian. Ranit is Israeli, and of course, Dr. Kennedy is from Ireland, and Roberta Vittman is from the United States. So we have an international group here. As far as psychedelics go, I mean, we've been hearing, Ranit, more and more and more in the media and, about a variety of mental health conditions that appear to be responding to psychedelics. And of course, there's still a lot of controversy. I was reading an article last week, very alarming article about, in quotes, evidence-based information and research that we're not so sure that it's really all that evidence-based. So tell us, what are your experiences now at Columbia as a researcher, as a psychologist, in this whole new world that we're talking about in the world of psychedelics?
Okay, thank you. So first of all, psychedelics is not a whole new world. Psychedelic has been with us for thousands and... Louder? Okay, how is that? I think yours is the best. Thank you.
There we go.
Is this better? So first of all, it's not new. Psychedelic plants have been with us for many years, thousands of years, and they have a very interesting relationship with the human race. They come, they interact, and they leave because we somehow mess it up. And it's not under my realm of knowledge, although I do try to do some readings, but excuse me. I do suggest to people to read the history of psychedelic drugs or plants and to learn more about it. And some cultures still hold to it. They're not the Western cultures, and probably for many complex reasons, but they have been keeping them alive. But most of us in one generation interacted and then had to leave. And I think the era that many of you will recall is that in the 50s and 60s, it was, they were starting to do studies and this and that, and Timothy Leary and the hippies, and it got incredibly better and it went astray. And we were forbidden to do it for more than a few years. So this time, once again, academics want to approach it in a much more careful way, regulated way, and hopefully it will become part of treatment in mental health. Emphasize being careful. Let me say something, my own definition of mental illness in 2 words. Everyone forgive me. First of all, let's think of dysregulation instead of illness, which unfortunately has been stigmatized. We all get dysregulated. Our emotions can get dysregulated, our thoughts and our behaviors. And we are, all of us, on some kind of a continuum. And the normals, although we are all dysregulated, we bounce back somehow. We can get very sad, we can get distraught, we can get dysfunctional for a few days, sometimes for a few weeks. If something horrendous happened, we bounce back. There is a certain group of people who are defined as having mental illness, and they get stuck. they don't bounce back. And this is the group I'll be talking about today. There is another issue with treating people with mental illness. They're very much affected. Either they had traumas and that created, or I don't know if created, but initiated the mental illness, or they were born with some inclination. And then I would say life challenges, and now I'm broadening the word trauma because you heard I had the wonderful honor, unfortunately, to work. I'm saying unfortunately because too bad Vietnam War happened and too bad 9/11 happened, but I was honored to work with those people. So obviously they had something immense that affected them. Some people, sometimes life events are very challenging and are very daily and subtle. How many families have a child who is born and they're highly dysregulated? They have nightmares and they can get very angry from the first minute they're born. And I'm talking in extreme ways. And no, it's not the parents' fault. Let me announce that. It's true that parents affect their children's life, but it's not fault. So suddenly the whole family is in a very challenging situation, and for weeks and for months and for years. And not only that, the treatment that we have to offer in psychology and psychiatry compared to other medical fields, we are kind of still at the back of everything. We have not advanced as we would like to compared to other realms of medicine, and we all know that. It's not just because the funding, it's not just because of stigma. The brain is a very complex organ, and we still don't have all the equipment, tools, call it what you want, to search it. I'm going now to psychedelic drugs. Until now, whether people took medications or went to psychotherapy, the Western medicine is not holistic. What do I mean by that? The medicines, they mostly affect the brain, and in an indirect way, they can affect the mind, but it's indirect. It's kind of a byproduct. If someone goes to psychotherapy, we do our best to affect the mind, but our ability to affect the brain itself is not, we don't have that much strength to it. That's why people come to have psychotherapy, and after 2 sessions I say, you know something, I really want you to add some medications. I came to you not to take medications. I say, yes, but my psychotherapy conversations work with your mind, and I would like to regulate also your brain. And I don't have enough strength in my conversations to do it right away. So I'm not saying that's true for everyone, but to really get mentally ill healed, we need to affect both. Psychedelic medicines are potent and different in that way. They're holistic. They affect immediately both the brain and the mind. A lot of research and studies are happening as we speak about the brain. I don't have enough time to go into it. The brain starts behaving differently for a few hours and then for a few weeks later. Why am I saying it affects the mind? Because the person who lays down while they take it, and they need to have a therapist with them, I'll say something about it in 1 minute, they see things, they sense things, some see angels, some see mundane conversations they had with their mother 50 years ago, and some just go through hell as far as images, memories. We don't know, and we cannot predict it, but we are assuming that when the psychedelic medicine meets the person, they interact both with the brain and the mind. Please notice the word interaction. The person needs to be open to it, welcome it, and participate in it. And I want to say, because of this, all I've just said, and that's where Betty is absolutely correct, we, at this point in our studies, we do treat people with treatment-resistant depression, meaning nothing else worked. With people, we do psilocybin, mushrooms, People probably heard in Mount Sinai and the VA, there's a lot of work with MDMA, which is another psychedelic, not from plants, man-made. I can talk about that for a few hours. That's for people who've been traumatized. But the idea that the people who come although they have an illness and they suffer and they're very vulnerable, they need to be able to interact with what's going on. That's why we screen very carefully until we learn that we can skip it, which we are doing more and more studies. What do I mean by screening? People don't want to have a heart condition when they come to these type of medicines. Women don't want to be pregnant. We don't know how that affects. And honestly, if a man wants to make someone pregnant, we also don't recommend it. If that's the plan for the next, few months, we don't know the effect. We don't want people to have they cannot suffer from bipolar depression at this point because we don't know exactly how much to give and which one of those psychedelic drugs to give. There are more than few. They each act very differently. Some people here who did it recreationally would know to tell me, yes, they do affect very differently. So we need to learn all this so we can help people with mental illness. So there's a lot of screening that goes on. I'll be silent. I'm a talker.
No, this is all very, very important. So, what you're saying is this would never be a first-line treatment. So this would be for people who have suffered from depression, bipolar disorder, various other psychiatric issues that have not been resolved using more traditional means, including psychotherapy and perhaps medication. Is that right?
I want to reframe it a little bit.
Okay.
I think, look, some people take it, they go to the forest to have,
Right.
a divine event. I am not going to say anything about that. I'll only say, I don't know how many people have heard of Ram Dass. More than few. Ram Dass was actually in his younger life, and may his soul be in peace wherever it is at the moment. He was a researcher. And by the way, he was the right hand of Timothy Leary. He actually was part of those studies. And Timothy Leary should take the responsibility. And they treated people and they also took it themselves and it got too wild. So Ram Dass later on moved into Buddhism. And one of the things he used to say about psychedelic drugs, and he obviously had a lot of experience in it, he said, psychedelic drugs give us a glimpse of something. We then need to do the work, the rest of the work, so to get not just to a glimpse, but to the whole thing. So my answer to you, people who suffer from mental illness need to be very careful. There are other methods. I don't want to say it will be the first or the second. I think we lack precise medicine in psychiatry and psychology. My lab is working now for years that we'll be able to see a person and tell them, you need that type of psychotherapy and that type of medication, and you don't need to try it for 20 years to get to the right thing. That would really be the hope for our domain. Right. But it should really be very carefully screened.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that people, whether or not we're talking about orthopedics or psychotherapy or psychedelics, it's very, very important to get second opinions on all of this. I read something in the Washington Post last week. The headline was, "Agony over ecstasy. FDA bid shows it's hard to test psychedelics." So again, we're seeing, as Dr. Kennedy, you were saying that there are clinics opening up. There are stores, we can see in New York opening up. And this summer, I understand that in August, MDMA is going to be legalized by the FDA. And there have been a lot of concerns about the quality of the studies that were done that led the FDA to a place where they were going to be approving. So again, how careful we need to be, whether it's orthopedics, whether it's psychotherapy, whether it's psychedelics, who it is that we are allowing into our space, into our lives. And always get a second opinion, and maybe even a third opinion.
And Betty, I want to add one more thing to that, and it may be time for me to be silent. But the issue of who it is, I always say when you go to a psychotherapist and they're not so great, unless you unfortunately get stuck for too long, so you wasted your money and it was not such a great encounter. No one dies, right? I kind of say
Wow.
that. Although sometimes, and I probably should, you're looking at all these experiences that went horrendously wrong. I wasn't thinking about them for a minute, so forgive me.
No, of course.
But you just go to someone, you don't click, you're like, ugh, you don't go back to this person. When you or someone close to you who are mentally vulnerable and do want to have psychedelic medicine, there is the whole issue of who is the therapist that will work with them through the process. And this therapist needs to feel very connected to this therapist, because this therapist for a few weeks will take the person through thick and thin, which I can talk more about, but not tonight or not today. So you really want, if you yourself or someone else goes to and you have a guide or a therapist, you need to feel you can trust this person, you can connect. This person will hold your hand. This person needs to be very attentive to you as you lay down for hours and listen to music and go up and down and all of the above. So it's the therapeutic alliance needs to be very strong with the person who guides you. And I think you said something which made me want to emphasize that.
Right, and of course that holds true for the psychotherapy patient relationship that you would have, whether it was with a psychedelic person or with somebody else. But I want to get to Roberta Mittman. And Roberta is a health and wellness success coach and a licensed acupuncturist. You were one of the first people that I met when I met and came to New York. So tell me, what are the primary reasons why people are contacting you?
I love that question because I like to describe myself as your everyday coach. And I came to this type of coaching actually from my acupuncture and alternative medicine practice. I had a wellness center just a few doors down on Park Avenue for 10 years. And now I've evolved into, which I'll just describe very quickly, into my scripting practice, the coaching. And the people who come to me are referred by therapists sometimes, and they see that their patients are really doing nicely in this particular area, and they come to me themselves. I have therapists in the practice. I also have a nice amount of men, which I really enjoy. It's different. I think men are waking up to see that there is somebody there for them. They've suffered in silence way too long, and it's a really nice outlet for them because men don't have a lot of friends of their own. And not that I'm a friend, but they just don't have anyone to confide in. And also, what I like to say are people with, I call them HSPs. Is anybody here familiar with HSPs? Well, chances are that you could be one of them and not know it. I'll explain what that is in a minute too. But the people who come basically have relationship issues, body image issues. They could have health and nutrition, need that kind of guidance. But basically, they don't feel comfortable in their own skin for some reason, and they've probably been carrying that their whole life. They just have to feel that they belong somewhere or that they're not resolving whatever's going on. And so they come to me or they're referred by other clients. I really love it. And it takes its basis from acupuncture and the really elegant meridian system. And also like what Dr. Kennedy said, that your body really has this beautiful innate way of healing itself. So we just tap into that from different ways. So there's the acupuncture practice, and there's also the virtual coaching practice. So there's two parts to rescripting.
So, for example, somebody comes to you and they're having relationship issues. Where would you begin, or how would you begin?
Sure. Okay. Well, for instance, there's a saying, I love that. Have the life that you love, live the life that you want, is the main theme here. So we kind of find out what is getting in the way of having that relationship that you want. It's an energetic process, but we go through the emotions that can be involved in that and where it came from. What's blocking you from having the relationship that you want, and what's getting in the way? There's like trapped emotions and blockages from way back. And I have this proprietary way of figuring that out, but I will tell you that I'm not a therapist and I'm not a psychic. People say, oh my God, that's like magic. But it does really help people to make peace with what is and to drop resistance sometimes, and to become aware of now what's available to them once there's the fears and things are out of the way.
And one of the things that I think people would be interested in knowing is when you talk about rescripting,
Yeah.
okay, why is it so unique? What does that process of
Okay.
rescripting, what does it look like? What does it feel like?
So part of the description of it is really going to be, it just takes a little too much time, honestly, but I can quickly cut to the chase.
Okay.
And I can tell you that it's energetic to a large degree. There's like interactive, non-invasive, but we also deal with the meridians, and there's some muscle testing involved where I can pick up what's going on with that person and just follow that thread and see where it takes us. Many times, it's kind of the way you do one thing is the way you do everything sometimes. And we just feel like, where was the wound, or what was the problem that you're still living out in your life today? One of my favorite expressions is, you could be giving the keys to your car to a 5-year-old, because in your mind, in that moment when you were 5, you made a decision. And that decision has carried through to your life today. So what we do is rescript it. We also reframe it. We find out what it is, and then we decide, who would you like to be moving forward into this part of your life as an adult, and not as a powerless child who doesn't know anything else to think. It's a habit.
You know, what we all have in common here, which is so great, is that we're all talking really about getting to the root of the problem.
Exactly.
And not putting bandages on psychic wounds, on physical wounds. And I've always found that is, at least in my world of psychotherapy and sex therapy, that's really the only way to go, is to really understand, you know, what happened. And even though we're not able to change our history, that there is a way to help people physically and emotionally and psychologically work through whatever did and didn't happen in their lives, so that once and for all, finally, you know, and ideally, the people are able to live in the moment, in the present, without having one foot in the past and one foot in the present. And it's an amazing process, and we're really all saying the same thing in our different worlds.
Exactly.
And that's the truth, so that if you find yourself where somebody, you know, is offering you a quick fix, please give yourself permission to leave and exit and get a second opinion or a third opinion, because these quick fixes typically, you know, they may put some money into the practitioner's wallet, but they are not typically going to be helpful for you, and they're not typically going to be things that are in your best interest.
In my acupuncture practice, I noticed, and this is how it became to be evolved into like a particular technique, that people who are having, my patients who are having acupuncture, and they would just kind of seem sometimes to come in if they have pain or digestion or headache or sleeping, and they would come in for various treatments, you know, and sometimes it would be getting a little better, sometimes it would come back a little bit. When we started to look at the stress component and the emotional component, it was like that. The treatment times were shortened and the results really skyrocketed. So it really changed the landscape for me, and I am so excited to be able to bring this to people all over the world. And it just seems to work. But what I do like to say is that these everyday issues are really hiding a lot of the things that are you can get to the bottom of those, and they really, it's like a domino, because it affects so many other things. However, if there's a issue that goes into maybe your realm or in any of these professional realms, you know, I stay in my lane and I refer to professionals and therapists and licensed professionals, and we just stay with what is here in front of us.
Right. And you know, one of the things I find myself saying, you know, on my show on a weekly basis is that we need to remember that we all go through so many ups and downs in our lives, and nobody is immune, whether we're talking about physical challenges or emotional or psychological or relationship or psychiatric issues. And I want a takeaway for all of you to be is that we don't need to navigate this life journey on our own, and that the very, very best thing that we can do if we find that we're kind of going around in circles is to reach out and ask for really good professional help. And of course, good is the key word here. And one of the other things that hasn't yet been mentioned is this is something that Cheryl Benton and Anne do on a regular basis. You know, how wonderful it is that you provide a forum, not just once a year, but on a very regular basis, on a weekly basis, to help women come together and to feel supported and to feel the love that we all need to be able to function in our lives, whether or not we're dealing, you know, with physical issues or emotional issues. And it's really a gift, Cheryl and Anne, that you give all of us on a very, very regular basis. And I know for one, I'm very grateful. And,
I second the motion.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Beautiful.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something which kind of popped regarding psychedelics, but relates to what we just said. I've for years believed that it takes a whole village sometimes to help a person, and we want to acknowledge that, and we need the different professionals, and we need to know when we need whom. But I just want to say, because I was still talking about the things that can go wrong, people who have a mental illness and meet the psychedelics, sometimes the best thing that happens to them, it lays out some kind of a plan for them. They could suddenly look at themselves and start figuring out what do they need in their next chapters. And that's why for people who suffer from mental illness, this is huge. This is huge. So I just wanted to emphasize that and agree with everyone else about the village that we need to treat a person.
No, that's for sure. And you know, when talking about psychedelics and the research that you're doing, are you feeling optimistic that we are going in a good direction, in the right direction, with more and more use and talk about psychedelics?
Psychedelics, as I said, through history have went in and left because the human race was shaky, and we are right now in a shaky place in the world. So I'm optimistic, and I think eventually we'll figure it all out. But it depends on the research, and as you alluded, and I understand, unfortunately, here and there we see that some of the studies are not so accurate and could be more. Some of us do our best to be accurate. So it depends on a lot of factors. But I advise people to go to places. NYU, there is a lot of studies, and you've been doing it for many years now. Columbia started more recently. John Hopkins is another known place so I suggest to people to go to professionals that have done research and are doing research.
Right.
So we can be optimistic about results.
Right, and not all the stores that are opening up. I see you on the Upper West Side. It's quite something. It's becoming. I mean, what a business. I mean, and you know, America, of course, is so much about business, and again, we have to be very mindful and very, very careful. So it looks like 45 minutes has come and gone, and I really want to, Dr. Kennedy,
I
before,
just wanted to underscore what my very colleagues have already said. It really does take a village. Sorry, Ken, it really does take a village to get us well in the general sense. And if you look at American medicine now, unfortunately, with insurance companies, we have 7 minutes to interview a patient, find out what's wrong with them, and come up with a treatment plan. That's not acceptable. It really isn't. And so when you ask where should you go to get the best treatment, I think the universities are where you have the village. You have the ability to, at the end of that 7 minutes, that's not it. Then you need to see this person or that person. And one of the things you said earlier on, that stress is such a major component of outcomes of whatever we do. So we were lucky. We have an office down in West Palm, and the very same people that live in New York oftentimes live down in West Palm. And when you look at the outcomes of surgery in New York, where you're expected to get back to work within a couple of days, versus those same people when they're down in West Palm and have less stress and less, the outcomes of those surgeries are far better where there's less stress.
One last thing, and that is, with all these things that people feel that they come in with, most of it is stress related, of course, especially this time. My last thing that I want to say when I advise my clients is you can't change the ocean, but you can learn to surf the waves.
Exactly.
And that is, I think, the goal for all of us.
I love that. I do. So I want to thank you, Renee, and Dr. Kennedy, and Roberta. I hope that your takeaway will be something that will be positive and that you will be able to think about and contemplate, you know, some of the things that we've spoken about today. And again, it's been a pleasure. I've wanted to meet both of you for so long, and I've known Roberta for a while. And as I say, I hope that there's been some little thing that we have talked about that will be helpful to you, and that will help you improve the quality of your life and the quality of your relationships and the quality of your day-to-day. So again, thanks so much, everybody.
So how are you enjoying the morning sessions? Fabulous, right? I think we've learned a lot. I know that I've really, really learned a lot. I am so excited right now because before we break for lunch, we have a very special performance. And Steve, come on up and you can get settled here. I'm going to introduce you to Steve Shacklin, who is just really an amazing guy. His songs have played off-Broadway, in symphony halls, temples around the world. He's the winner of BroadwayWorld.com's Editor's Choice Songwriter of the Year in 2015. To me, he should be Songwriter of the Year every year, and you'll know why after you hear him. He's well known for his off-Broadway musicals written with his partner Jim Brochu, including The Last Session, which garnered nominations from the New York Drama League and the Outer Circles Critic Award. He won the LA Drama Critics Circle winner, Best Musical Score. He's just a delightful human being, And I could listen to his music and his songs all day long. So thank you, Steve.
You're welcome. Since we're talking about alternative therapies, the best kind of alternative therapy in my mind is a good laugh. So this song, Cheryl asked for this song, and it came, New York is a very strange place because you're walking up and down the aisles of apartment buildings, you might hear the strangest conversations. So one day I was walking down, I heard this couple, and they were kind of arguing, and finally the woman just had it up to here. And she looked at him and said, I'd rather be naked in the freezing rain, swimming with some killer sharks, swallowing a poison pill, getting mugged in city parks, sailing in an iceberg float, clubbing little baby seals, sliding down a razor blade, sharing someone's prison meals, vacationing in Syria, then having to explain myself to you. Then having to explain myself to you. I'd rather be shooting up in Sunday school, tearing cats and dogs apart, diving on a hand grenade, smelling someone else's fart, drowning in an acid bath, milking angry tiger tits, doing college level math, cut up into little bits, vacationing in Syria, then having to explain myself to you. You say you want to talk, but then I find you drifting off. 'Cause you think you know what I am trying hard to say. But if you never listen, then this whole thing is a sham. And I'm not really in the mood to play. I'd rather be drinking sour dinner wine, jumping on a hornet's nest, barefoot in a cactus bed, see my mom and dad undressed. Underneath an avalanche, roasting in an open fire, watching basic cable news, wear a burning rubber tire, vacationing in Syria, then having to explain myself to you. I'd rather sip a cocktail in some Molotov cafe, drive a car in countryside patrolled by army drones, volunteer for ISIS just to pass the time of day, anything to make you go away. I'd rather see Donald Duck as president, Kim Jong-un in underpants, stuck inside a spider web, neck deep in some killer ants, eating worms and vomit sauce, sizzling in an acid rain, amputating body parts, run down by a speeding train, vacationing in Syria, then having to explain myself to you. Vacationing in Syria, then having to explain myself to you. Darling, I love you, but it's true. It's like vacationing in Syria with you. I have an unusual story in the fact that in 1994, I was diagnosed with full-blown AIDS. There was no cure or anything that was available on the market, and I had a terrible time in the hospital. I almost died several times. And when I came back out, I was basically a walking skeleton. I couldn't sit up. I couldn't hardly walk. And so after a little while, I was trying to deal with all of these emotions. And so for the first time in maybe a year or so, I was able to sit up and go to the piano. And I started to play my favorite big chords, churchy chords. I was just playing these chords, and I played all day long. I just kept playing this music. And if I had built myself up to like 60% of energy over that year, when I woke up the next day after playing the piano, my energy level was at 95%. It was a measurable, incredible change. And I think this is about stress. I think this is about cleansing your body with vibrations and energy and all of that stuff to flush out the poisons that are not chemical, or that maybe sometimes even are chemical as a result of all that stress. I also think sometimes we look at ourselves and we don't see our true selves. There's a lot more beauty inside than we give ourselves credit for. And I'm only doing one more song, so you all can go eat. But to think about this, okay? I watch you in the mirror as you trace your worry lines. You think you're not as beautiful as in our youthful times. Well, believe me when I tell you, all those lines you think you see are tissue paper overlay, invisible to me. I only see your laughing eyes when love first stung. I only see you young. Remember how you tricked me into sharing that first kiss. I was way too shy to see the signals I had missed. Don't tell me you don't get it. I see how you look at me. I'm still the awkward juvenile who trips on his own feet. I still feel our first embrace that made us one. I only see you young. And even if there were some subtle flaw, it's woven in the fabric of the face I love most of all. And though I've loved you all these years, I've just begun. I only see you young. I only see you young. I only see us young.
Thank you, Steve. Bravo. Thank you. That song makes me cry every time I hear it. Thank you,